And so if we set aside these basic principle, difficult things, in order to jump out there and do something public and something great, then we prove ourselves to be hypocrites. I remember several years ago after preaching, a church came up to me, a pulpit committee or a pulpit posse or whatever you want to call them. And they came up to me and they said, "You need to be our pastor." And I looked at them with a gleam in my eye and I said, "Have you lost your mind?" And the head pulpit guy, he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You don't know if I love my wife. You heard me preach one message and you think I can be your pastor?" That, my friend, is one of the great problems today. "Oh, I want to do missions. I want to do this." Okay, how's your home? "Well, I've got so many..." Let me tell you something. There are some people who give everything in their life to their home, and they are wrong because they neglect their local church. There are other people who get tremendously involved in the local church because their homes are shattered in a million pieces. The balance is what is needed. The first things first. Now, what we're going to do with the time that we have, I would, in this study, I'm actually going to do this in Chicago here pretty soon. I'm going to deal with self, and then wife, and then children, local church, missions. But tonight I just want to deal with self, and we're not even going to get started. But men, the thing is not for me to admonish you, or for even me to be admonished by the preaching that I have to do. Because remember, if I'm pointing one finger at you, I've got at least three pointing back at me. The question is, but how do I change? How do I become this man of God? Well, I am not so sure that we shall ever become him. But I know this: we need to lay aside our past and strive toward that goal. To strive toward that goal. As I said this morning, striving toward the goal of being a godly man is half the battle won. Because if you're anything like I am, you can go weeks without thinking about this. Now, first of all, I want you to understand something. In Romans 8:29 it says, "For those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to become conformed to the image of His Son, so that He would be the firstborn among many brethren." Before the foundation of the world, God's great purpose for you is to be conformed to the image of His Son. Do you see that? So we can actually say that is God's sunum bonum, that is God's great good for you, sir. Is to be conformed to the image of His Son, and that's what He's working on. Now you may be working on something else. But if you want to know where God is directing His efforts, it is in conforming your life to His Son. And that is the key to everything. And that is where the great strength lies. And that is where the rubber hits the road. Conformity to Christ. And if you skip over that, you're just going to be a shallow parrot of truth. Can you honestly say, the greatest goal in my life is to be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ? That if someone were to watch me, they would see that my endeavors are directed mostly to becoming like Jesus. Sir, would they say that? Would your children look at you and say, you know, Dad's great goal is to be like Jesus. He sees that as the most important thing. Would your wife be able to say, Not just she feels in her heart, but she watches your life and she sees how much time you give yourself to being renewed in your mind, to being transformed, to being like Jesus. Now again, I'm not preaching to you. I'm talking to you as a fellow brother. Folks, ministry is not what it's hyped up to be. None of this stuff. It's like I always say, rocks and donkeys, rocks and donkeys. God can speak through rocks and donkeys. And one of the most terrible things you can ever do is begin to believe everybody's hype about you. The key, the thing that I have to ask myself in the night watch, is any of this real, Paul Washer? Is your great goal to be conformed to the image of Christ? Is any of this real? You see, what is the most important trait in a man? Is it giftedness? Absolutely not. Some of the most gifted men in the world are self-destructive and destroy others. What does your wife need? What does your children need? What do your children need? What does the world need from you? Christ-likeness. This is what we are to strive toward. And it breaks my heart. Sometimes I don't like to go to conferences. I don't like to preach in them. I just sometimes in the middle of all the stuff being said all the time, I just want to stand up and say, enough! I've already got more truth than I know how to obey. I don't just want to know. I want to change. And I don't want to change on the so-called spiritual level. The public level, maybe is a better word. I want to change in the inner chambers of my heart with the people who know me, who really know me. So the goal is to be conformed to the image of His Son. Now, about this self-domination, I want to say three things about it. One, it's extreme. The other is it's deliberate. And the other is it's demanding. First of all, it's extreme. 2 Corinthians 10:5. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. I want you to look at how serious, how extreme the Apostle Paul is. He's not just seeking some superficial conformity in his life. He's just not wanting to be conformed to the will of God in certain areas or externally or publicly. Look what this man is saying. It was his desire to take every thought captive. That even his thoughts, the deepest expression of who he is, it was his desire that they be according to the will of Almighty God. One of the things that I so appreciate about the Puritans, and I don't always agree with them, but one of the things I so appreciate about them is their desire to submit every aspect of their life to the will of God. I mean, we are so many different things. My heart, is it submitted to the will of God? My mind, my eyes, my ears, my hands, my feet, all of me. I know no case throughout history where someone is a partial slave. And so it is extreme, men, but it is for our good. The freest man on the face of the earth is the one who makes himself a slave to a perfect master. Where has God been wrong? And where has He wronged you? Has there ever been a time when you've listened to Him, when you've obeyed Him, when you've sought out His will, that He has misled you somehow? Never. But have you ever followed your own ways and been misled by your own devices? Always.